my name is Tracey Cook, and welcome to the podcast series Victim to Victory. This series gives a voice to those that have overcome obstacles in all forms, that dare greatly to share their real stories. Amazing humans like our upcoming guest here in just a moment that has seen hope and risen above those adversities to become victorious, that now support and inspire others to do the same. And today we want to really give a voice and a platform to Candice Smiley in Canada. Welcome to Victim to Victory.
Well, thank you, Tracey. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. It is an absolute honor. Now, I'm going to share just some insights and we're going to get right into Candice's story because I've been checking out all of her stuff. We've had a pre-show chat. She's amazing. She's a rock star. She has got a story that will save and change lives, and what she's doing in the world, in the community, because we love world changers and movers and shakers here on Victim to Victory. And she has had the most amazing presence, I'm going to say. That's the word that I'm feeling at the moment, because she's been with a narcissistic and abusive romantic partner, cheated on her with multiple women. She'll probably share a little bit of that with you. And this is just one of the things that this amazing rock star has been through. Candice has navigated the challenging world of foreclosure court, filing for financial proposals and divorce. And during these times, she adopted a minimalistic lifestyle. I would love to hear more about that, and leaned on her personal network and practice radical personal forgiveness, acceptance, and responsibility. Now, her journey has impact. Her journey is open to be shared, and how she powerfully went about dealing with anxiety, depression, shame, and learning to let go. She is now debt-free, financially stable, and in a safe, committed relationship. You need to go check her out. We'll be sharing where to connect with her as well. And she is a voice for listening to your own truth and speaking it powerfully. And when you watch some of her content, you will know that she is a no fuss kind of woman. She doesn't pull punches. She's here to show you how to become a better version of yourself, 100%. Candice, where does your story start?
Oh my goodness. Well, you definitely hit some of the highs, or I guess the low points. There were some low points in there. And to be honest with you, it was a sort of a sequence of events, right? That had started when I was younger, about 20 years ago, was the first significant event with a sexual assault, which led really because I didn't take the time to do a lot of the healing. And I don't necessarily know that you know how to heal after some of these things, regardless of what the situation is. We have these moments of trauma in our lives. And if we don't do the work to heal whatever has been shifted within us, based on our expectations, how we thought life was going to go, right? The whole why me, it can be very, very easy to continue to repeat patterns that continue to hurt ourselves. And that was certainly what happened with this, former partner of mine. And one of them is I just tended to attract people that continued to reinforce the beliefs I had about myself, that I wasn't necessarily worthy. Although if you looked at, the outside of my life, it looked like I had, we had a nice house, we had nice cars, we did lots of traveling. But within and internally, there was certainly a lot of things that were not awesome. And it was 4 women that I know about, but who knows? And there hasn't been necessarily a lot of justice, because this person, left the country, and really I was just sort of left dealing with the situation, which really sort of inspired me to go, like, your podcast talks about, from victim to victory, because I didn't want this person to win. I didn't want these situations that had happened to me to define me, because I always felt like, even if that was the quietest voice within me, I felt like there was more to it. And I felt like if I don't find what the silver lining is, if I can't work through this and find some healing and then transmute this story into something more powerful, then those are going to define me and these people win. And that was just something I couldn't live with, even though it's taken, quite a few years to come to a place of peace and presence. Like you say, I love that you use that word because it's a really powerful word in my life. How can I be more present with it? And rather than running from these things, and for a long time I didn't talk about my story. I didn't start talking about it actually until last year in January, February, when I finally found the courage to start talking about it without shame or guilt, and really invite some of these traumatic experiences to come and have dinner with me and sit there without fear and say, hey, you've created this, and maybe there are elements of me that are defined by this, but how can we use it for good? So yeah.
Because all those self-limiting beliefs come in, don't they? Because we're dealing with that shame and that guilt. And if we fall kind of victim to that, and they win, whoever's done that thing or been that person to us, they get to win. And they don't get to win because we're the prize, And I hear this so often, and this is what I love about your story as well, Candice, because you mentioned shame and guilt. Share a little bit around that, if you wouldn't mind. Like, what did that feel like to you?
Well, for example, when the first assault happened at 17, that was a really defining moment for me, because I grew up in a very conservative Christian household. And so this idea of purity really defined who I was. And again, I don't necessarily think, it has to be that specific thing, but when we are defined by a certain thing, how we see ourselves, and that particular belief gets shattered, that can bring just a huge shift. And so for me at the time, I was a singer. I had grown up being a performer. No surprise now, right? Looking at what I do with my life. But I actually stopped singing. I stopped speaking. And so shame for me actually shut me up. And I can literally remember it was like, think of Ariel in Little Mermaid, right? It just disappeared. And I couldn't talk about what had happened. I couldn't find, any joy to sing anymore. And just a lot of things just moved forward from there. So shame for me really feels very constricting. It feels very trapping. And I, to be honest, on this side of things, the healing end, there really wasn't anything anybody could have said to me that I wasn't already saying to myself. And I think that was surprising to me. It was also surprising to me that I was feeling just horrible inside, reliving these moments that were traumatic and not knowing how to process them or who to talk to about them. And people would ask, how are you? And I realized very quickly that people don't actually pay any attention to your answer. And that was almost more scary, that I was like, how am I alone in this room full of people? How are these people, my friends and some of my family who have known me forever? They know something's off, but they don't know, and they're not taking the time necessarily to say, are you okay? Like, whatever it is, we can get through it, right? And I think it was because there's so much secrecy, right, that comes with shame and with guilt. Shame, certainly, right, very internal for me. And the guilt of, I did this, right? I chose this partner. I got myself in this mess. And those two particular ideas continued. Even now, to be honest, when I hear my story, I think, wow, what must people think, right? Like, this girl got herself into trouble a few times. Yeah, I did, because I didn't stop to do the healing work. And so I was not paying attention to the internal voices that were saying, this guy's bad news, this doesn't feel 100% right, because those feelings were certainly there throughout my life. I just was ignoring them because I was so hungry to not feel the guilt and shame, to, prove to myself and everybody else that I was okay. And because of that, because I couldn't find that space or that energy or the courage to be that vulnerable and therefore stand in my own strength and power, then I just kept repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating these patterns.
And that's something that it's almost like a trauma bond, or like you're trying to prove yourself right as well, isn't it? It's like your belief system is being attacked. You're not listening to your gut instinct, which everybody has, and we so ignore it. And I love that you touched on the fact that you're surrounded by family and friends, and they knew something was off. And even if they did ask if something would, how are you? They weren't listening anyway. And that's a really big cue for people. If you have got a gut instinct and you know that something is off with somebody. They're not normally doing the things that they would normally do. Like for you, it was singing and things like that. So these things that they're really passionate about, that are really tied to their core beliefs, picking up on those things and really sitting down with someone and looking them in the eyes and go, how are you? And then just waiting for them to tell you how they are, and then supporting them through that as well. And we all have to be more aware. We've all got our own life and stuff going on, but it literally takes you 30 seconds to sit down and go, you're a little bit off lately. Can I help you with anything? How are you? And really genuinely mean it. So I'm so glad that you kind of brought that to everybody's attention through that as well. So where did you go from there, Candice? Because this is you said that you're no longer, you're having dinner without that fear, shame and guilt. So how did you find that real transition? What was that one defining moment, if there was one, that really made you think, I need to get rid of this shame and guilt?
I think there were moments in the same way that, there was a moment and there were moments throughout that were not so awesome in the spiral. There were also moments within there because I didn't really feel like I could stop and do the healing, right? And I think that for a lot of people that's the case, right? We're just sort of suffering and we're limping through life because we can't pause our lives, and there's still bills, and there's, there was university, then there was jobs and all this other stuff. One of the defining moments certainly was I'd met really great counselors throughout my life, so I was aware, right? I, did find myself thinking about and almost committed suicide. And that was certainly a first moment. And it was actually my cat that, hung out with me and wouldn't leave me alone and that night. And I finally, picked up the phone and made a phone call to, people. And I hesitate sometimes to share those things, but I know that people are thinking about it. They just need to reach out, because there was certainly, the person on the end of that phone call and then the person that they connected me to were huge in terms of the beginning of my healing. And it was only 8 sessions, so it wasn't like it was, fixed in in 2 months, but it started the ball rolling. It started habits of journaling. It started me looking at books and reading books and moving forward and looking for the feeling of relief, which was all I could search for at the time, because there was so much pain and so much anguish, and I had just been layering on the guilt and the shame that I knew it was going to be a long road. And that's something I really like to talk about when I'm talking about my story, is I need other people to know. I intuitively knew it was going to be a lot of work, and it was probably going to take some time, probably more time than I wanted to admit, even to myself, before I would look up and realize I'm good. Like, I'm really good, right? And knowing that was not as discouraging as I think is maybe a false hope and a false promise that this is going to be fixed overnight and I can just band-aid this. I didn't really want to band-aid it. I wanted to, heal it. I wanted it to heal well. And I knew that things, when they heal, take time. And so that's really important for me to share. So there's somebody's listening and they're thinking, you don't know. I'll be like, no, I don't have to know. But I do know that when you make the commitment, you will look up, and it might be 10 years or 20 years or 8 years or 4 years or 2 years. I don't know what your timeline is going to be, but it's going to take longer than you think. And that's okay. Just do the work, because it's totally worth it when you get there. And there'll be these moments that make it worth it. The next moment was certainly my daughter being born. Realizing I wanted to be a mom, and realizing that some of these internal beliefs, right? If I was going to be the house that would, put her together and birth her, what subconscious beliefs might I unconsciously pass on to her, which really pushed me to start to, get better at some of that stuff. And so that was a big one. And then last year with COVID, I think that was a huge moment where finally we got to pause. And I went through a big breakup that I hadn't really expected, but I was, by this point, finally listening to the niggle. And so I knew the relationship needed to end. So did he. And it very powerfully and very, very purposefully didn't take away the pain. But because the world had stopped, I finally had time to do the rest of the work. And that was actually 14 more weeks of really intense healing, where I thought I dealt with this already. But I think with every level, when we grow, we discovered that there's another level of shame. There's another level of guilt. There's a subconscious belief, right? Mine was scarcity. Not that you can blame me after some of the stuff I've been through, that I thought, when's the other shoe gonna fall? And I needed to really look at that. And so finally had time, and that opened up, the space where I am now, where, I met somebody who, I was like, I've waited my whole life, right? I've worked my whole life to be the kind of person to attract this person. And, we just welcomed a brand new baby, and not even 3 weeks ago. So, I look back and think, I'm so glad I started the process of healing 20 years ago, because I'm ready now for how good it is. And I want more of it and stuff like that. So I think it's moments that have sort of kept me going through the healing.
And it's definitely a new level, new devil as well, because it just unsurfaces and it just keeps unwrapping. I've heard a lot of people say, it's like peeling back an orange peel, or, the different layers of the onion, whatever analogy that you actually use. We never stop healing, we never stop growing, and we never stop, re-breaking those old patterns, because I know it's really important for somebody who's been through, trauma and things like that as well, and that's on this healing journey, especially when you become a mum. And congratulations on your new bub as well. But really breaking those generational curses as well, and really tapping into, you don't want those beliefs that were holding you back to actually, like you mentioned with your daughter, you don't want those subconscious beliefs to actually be transmitted through to create and keep that generational kind of thinking or belief system. We want to be able to be better for the next generation as well. So I'm so glad that there's people like you that are really breaking and being aware of all of the patterns that may be holding them back, and really passing that on and saying, hey, it's okay, I don't have to get it 100% right, but at least I'm aware of it, and I'm trying to make as many changes, as I can, to bring up the next generation with your son and your daughter, to really build a legacy as well. And that's healing within itself, isn't it? To know that you've passed something on to the next generation that is going to make them better and more joyous and more productive out in the world and the community, and building that tenacity that we all need now as well. And where are you in your journey now?
I think I'm in an interesting space, where, like you said, new level, new devil. And I'm at the point now where I'm no longer beating myself up about that. It's actually kind of interesting when I'm like, oh, I'm at a new level. This feels new, right? We're growing and changing, and I'm expanding and reaching for new goals. And it's almost like I open up a door and I'm like, who's hiding in the corner, right? So it's almost like I'm looking now for some of the work. Some days I wake up and think I got life by the tail, right? I'm owning this. And then other mornings I wake up and think, nope,
not
Mama's
today.
got more work to do, right? So I
got to get to work,
right? Yeah, my partner talks about that. He's like, I always thought you'd meet, your person, and I'm really feeling blessed because I feel like I have met my person. And I it's the quietest love I've ever had. I've certainly had, wilder loves and loves that burned much hotter and faster. And this one just feels like something I can trust, which is a very interesting space. And I think a lot of it is because I trust myself now, right? I'll make a bet on myself anytime. I've made it all the way through. There were things that were hard, and, I was living hard. And so, yes, the hard work to heal was there, but I was already, living something that felt very hard. So I think now I'm at a place of peace, and a place that I've got it, I can handle it. I've made it this far. And there's some expectancy of joy, and some calling it in of, enough is enough. It's been 20 years since the assault. I'm done. I'm ready for all of the good. I'm ready to share the story, and I'm ready to help other people to step up and into what's good for them. So that's a whole new level. But, whether you get there or you meet your person or whatever it is, the work continues. And so I think that's become just almost a comfort thing, right? I'm going to get up today and I'm going to work, and I'm going to find something I need to work on, and I will work on that. And if I need a coach, I'll find them. If I need a book, it'll be brought to me. And so I think that's where I'm at now, just an expectancy, and a peace that, today will be what it is.
And just especially taking each day as it comes as well. Like you said, one day you've got life by its tail, and the next day you're like, nope, I haven't.
Nope.
And that's great, because we just have to be that little bit better. We don't have to be perfect, just that little bit better than we were the day before. And it's okay to have those ebbs and flows. It's okay to kind of go, you know what? It's not a peoply day outside today. I'm just going to stay in and just work on myself and grab a book and a hot coffee and just, you know, sit in that space. But tomorrow, I'm going to have it by the tail again. And that's just so important. And especially as women, because we do wear a lot of hats. The fellas do too, but us women, we wear so many hats and we take on so much more empathetically in some spaces than the blokes. And just to like you mentioned right at the beginning when we're talking, you know, just to own your power and, you know, kind of get rid of that scarcity and just to be open to that abundance. You know, that's just a beautiful place to be, just to be open for all of the good, because we've survived 100% of our bad days. You've survived 100% of your bad days, and it's completely okay. And I love this message that you share, that you're ready to accept love and abundance, and it's there for you, and you're really comfortable with that. And some days you own it and some days you don't, and that's okay. And that's a really great place to be. And with your work that you're doing, what kind of work are you doing you know, out in your field now as well?
Well, I'm really blessed in that I, you know, have always done, you know, sales and marketing and stuff like that. So I've been, you know, sort of this person who makes her own way. So right now, you know, the work is, you know, the affiliate marketing, which for me is about teaching other women that they can access their own kinds of funds online and that sort of thing. So it's much bigger than that, right? It's many different ways, but using the tools like the internet to create the funds so I can be present with my children, which is a huge thing for me. And then the big work really is, you know, the podcast. It's sharing the work, right? So there's the work, which is awesome. And, you know, then the work, and it's all got to be coming from a space of integrity for me, which is just about empowering people to, you know, live fully, right? Like radical acceptance, radical forgiveness. Like you got to be sort of a little outside of what is normal, I think, in order to be making a difference, right? Well-behaved women don't make history. So, you know, I think
I've actually got that sticker on the back of my car. I've
it's my
actually
favorite. And people are
literally
like, what?
got that sticker on the back of my car.
I love it. I love it so much. And, you know, I think about, you know, even, just the women who have done something and that we remember they were willing to be like, there's normal. I'm going to be just a little outside of it. And so I think that's a big deal for me is I'm not necessarily sure where or how this is going to work. I just know that every day I wake up, sometimes earlier than others, and there's a reason I do, right? And it's a lot of this, you know, candid connecting, like we're doing this casual conversation where we're inviting other people, certainly other women in. And I think one of my favorite quotes is, you know, what happens when one woman tells the truth about her life? The world splits open. And at the beginning, for me, it felt like every time I told the truth, people were like, what? I had no idea. And it was the splitting open wasn't necessarily a good thing. Whereas now, based on where I am and sort of the stories that I'm sharing, it's less for, you know, the shock factor as it was when I was in my healing, and more for if I can tell the truth, so can you. And we don't necessarily worry about telling the truth to the world because the world may not deserve your truth.
Powerful.
But not everybody deserves the best of us, right? That's reserved. We show up authentically and raw, but when we tell the truth to ourselves, then we can live in a space of integrity where there is no anxiety, there is no, incongruency. It's easy to set boundaries. And we practice self-care on a whole nother level. And so that's really important for me, that if I can show up and be this honest, maybe someone else can be just a little bit honest with themselves. And I know that if they just continue that, at some point they'll be living so free that it won't matter. The microcosm will begin to affect the macrocosm.
No, very, very powerful, very tweetable quotes there from Candice today as well. I love it. No, it is very much a powerful place to be when we really own our true authenticness and embrace our weird. I call it embrace your weird. And what kind of message would you like to leave the audience on today as well, Candice?
I think just, reminding them that, regardless of whether you're looking for love or looking for peace or whatever it is, wherever you are in your journey, whenever you get there, there is going to move. And you realize there's another, and it needs to move, because I've also gotten to, a place or a goal and not reset a goal, and you can get stuck and stagnant, which is worse, I think, than realizing, you need to keep moving the goalpost and becoming a better version of yourself. But that I want to remind everybody that it takes time, and that's okay. Let it take some time. I was sharing the other day with a friend of mine that, when I went to go leave my marriage, I made the decision I needed to do that. I knew I needed to do it months before. I had to work through my own being able to tell myself that truth. And then when I did finally tell myself that truth, I told my daughter, she was 6 days old, and I said, we need to leave. I don't know how. Mommy has to figure that out, but I'm going to take care of you and we're going to do this together. And then I looked in the mirror and I said, but first we're going to lose 50 pounds. And some of that was me realizing I had just not prioritized my own, health care. How in the world could I take care of her if I couldn't take care of me? And so I didn't attack the big, hairy, scary goal of getting freedom and getting out of, breaking the pattern of those relationships. I started with the small thing. And I think that's important for some women to know, is that, that took me a few months, and then I worked on building up my business and taking it online and learning some new skills. It actually took me 2.5 years before I actually left. So there was the decision that I made internally in my heart and told myself the truth, which had been about 10 months in the making. And then the work and some of the healing, so that I was actually healing in the moment, in the relationship, in the thing that still wasn't awesome, working through that. Then I took off and I went and did some house sitting across North America. So I gave myself some time. And then at the end of that, I sat down and said, hey, this isn't working, and I think we need a divorce. And I think that's really important for people. No, you're not on anybody's timeline but your own. So make the intention first to yourself. Don't necessarily share that with everybody. Write it down, share it with somebody who can hold that confidence with the same energy and intention that you can. Do what you need to do so that when you can begin to make decisions, you're not making them and waffling. Because I know that for me, it felt like my life was 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. And how come I end up with that same guy again? And I just wasn't giving myself the time. And so rather than trying to be perfect or fixed or healed all in one day, don't, just live in the moment, practice some radical forgiveness first with yourself, and some radical acceptance, come to a place of it is what it is, and then move forward from there when it's good for you to do so. And you'll find it, your life will just begin to flow for you.
Some great, powerful, practical advice from Candice Smiley. She has been an awesome guest today. Thank you so much, Candice, for being very brave to share your story. I know that each time that you tell your story, that we tell our story, it doesn't get any easier, but the message and the impact that it makes just might save or change somebody's life. So we'll be sharing where to connect with you. You are very much appreciated. And you can find the Victim to Victory podcast series on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our Facebook group as well. So please subscribe, share, and comment. Leave a review for Candice so that her message of empowerment, overcome, and perseverance and radical change, I love it, can be the message that people will move forward with in their own journeys and lives as well, to help be the change that the world actually needs. So let me leave you with a message of figure out who you are and do it on purpose. Thanks so much, Candice.
Thank you.